Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius. I'm John Ledyard from pewterreport.com. With me today on this wonderful Wednesday edition of the Pewter Report podcast is the one and only Scott Reynolds, and our focus continues to be on this offseason outlook with the Bucs as we look at the cornerback position. Scott, there is literally nothing going on in the NFL right now. This is one of the few weeks of the year, couple weeks in February after the Senior Bowl, before the Combine, before the week before the Combine, honestly.
Right.
We start hearing stuff the week before the Combine. Now we're in that lull period, and we can talk about whatever we want, but at the same time, it's like people are finally breathing from the NFL season. Oh, we have the Super Bowl on Sunday, of course.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's certainly not as fun as it was last year, right? I mean, this time last year we were talking about the Bucs.
We didn't even have these weeks last year. We didn't have them at all. We just went right to it was literally Super Bowl, and we turned around and Combine.
Yeah, we had Jason Light on talking about the Super Bowl. We had Bruce Arians on talking about the Super Bowl. Everybody was in a good mood and happy. Now everyone's like, what's going to happen? Who's going to be the quarterback of this team? And is Carlton Davis going to be back? Is Chris Godwin going to be back? So from a journalist standpoint, from a news standpoint, it's kind of exciting because there's going to be a lot happening. I mean, buckle up. This offseason is going to be quite intense and quite busy. I think most of my family and friends now understand that my true off season, using air quotes here for the audio podcast,
right?
My off season is like June and July, because there really is no off season. February and in March and April, there's no football per se. There's no games to cover. My Sundays are freer now, as are yours. Right. But there's going to be plenty of news, and I think one of the main topics is going to be Carlton Davis. Is he going to get the franchise tag? There's a lot of question marks when it comes to the cornerback position, John.
Right.
This is not a position that you look at long term and say, they got their nickel, they got their outside guys, they're set. Gravedigger's intact for years. Last year, with injuries to Sean Murphy-Bunting, with injuries to Carlton Davis, with injuries to Jamel Dean, it kind of interrupted the evaluation process for the team and trying to look at the future forecast and say, we feel really good about our cornerback position.
Right.
I don't think they feel really good about their cornerback position. They feel good about one guy, but he's not under contract next year.
Right.
That's Carlton Davis.
Right. It's going to be complicated because this past year did not provide as much clarity as I'm sure the Bucs would have liked to provide, but it still gave us some things, and we'll talk about those in today's shows. We'll look at free agency, we'll look at the draft, we'll look at all of it, and we'll talk about how the team should and could address cornerback moving into the offseason. But first, all this is going to be brought to you by our friends over at Celsius, which I unfortunately forgot to grab one before today's show.
That's what I got today.
What did you get?
Cola.
Oh,
Cola.
This is the one people are hyping.
Yes. Okay, so here's the thing. I tried this flavor a couple of months ago, and I'm not a big cola drinker. I used to be when I was younger, with my teens and 20s. I drank sodas all the time. Mm-hmm. And as I've gotten older, sodas are not the best thing for you, right? But sometimes I miss that cola flavor, right? Yeah. And the great thing is Celsius has nailed it. They've done it again, right, with this cola flavor. Wow. I'm not going to mention any brand names, but folks, if you like the taste of cola, this is for you. Mm-hmm. This is the Celsius that you need to drink. It's different from the other fruit flavors because there's no fruit in this one. This one is cola flavored, and it tastes like cola. So you can get that cola kick if you want a soft drink. And John, the great thing about
no
this
sugar.
is no sugar, no preservatives. Wow. It's the same Celsius formula that's going to give you that energy without the crash. And it's going to give you that cola flavor. So the cool thing is I went and I usually have on the subscribe and save the orange flavor and my wife Ashley's favorite, the watermelon. Those come in every month like clockwork via the mail, via Amazon. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get the variety pack because there's some flavors that I haven't had in a while. Like I had this one the other day, grape, right? Tastes just like a grape soda. It's fantastic. And so I was pleasantly surprised. There's a couple colas in here, and I washed this down this morning. And I was like, damn, that tastes really good. So if you want to get Celsius and find out where to get all these flavors, click on those banner ads on pewterreport.com or go to Celsius.com, click on the store locator and type in your address, and you'll find out where you can get Celsius near you, whether it's at a health and fitness store, convenience store, grocery store, etc. Tons of flavors. One of those flavors, John, that you see here on the screen is sparkling strawberry guava. Celsius has got a special giveaway now through Valentine's Day, which is Monday. John, do you have the details on that?
Yeah, for sure. All you have to do is put your name and your email address in, and the link is literally below in the YouTube description. It's right there for you. Very easy. Just all you have to do is open that link up and put your name and your email in there, and you get entered to win yourself some. And there's going to be more than one winner too, by the way.
Yeah, 5 winners. They're going to get a free case of strawberry guava, and that's a great flavor because you think of strawberries and chocolates for Valentine's Day. So strawberry guava, they're going to give away 5 cases. So it's really easy. Go to, I believe it's Celsius.com /
yeah, I can put the link in there.
Pewter Report B-Day, and that link will take you to a sign up where you put in your name and email address, and they're going to pick 5 winners. So it's super cool, free way for you to get some Celsius.
Yeah, no question about it. It's great stuff. Let's talk about Carlton Davis, Scott, because this is we got to go, and James is ready to try the Celsius Cola. I love it.
It's good. It's good. I was sleeping on it for a while. I'm putting this one back in rotation, folks.
Right. That's good stuff. Let's talk about Carlton Davis. I don't know that I have seen a Bucs fan this offseason mention Carlton Davis and say they don't want him back, or maybe they shouldn't spend the money.
Right.
He's in the Chris Godwin Bucs fans will be beside themselves if either of those players are not back. And by all expectations, we believe that those players will probably be back. I put the link there in the chat for everybody.
It's Pewter V-Day. It's a Pewter Report V-Day. It's Pewter V-Day. Yep.
For the giveaway. It would be very strange for the Bucs to go into next season without Carlton Davis.
Yes.
Because there's no certainty at the other cornerback positions. Now, let's just address them all at once. We can honestly do that on the show. I think Carlton Davis is the number 1 corner in the NFL. I don't think he's the best corner in the NFL, but I think he's a very good football player. And him coming back from injury and playing at a high level, that was big for me, Scott. That really convinced me that this guy is ready to roll at the next level. He can reach that tier, I think. Maybe not Jalen Ramsey tier, if we're saying the very top guy in the league or whatever, but he played at an exceptional level all season long. If Carlton Davis had just caught the ball, he would have been a Pro Bowl. He was in, we're not talking about almost picks, Scott.
Right.
We're talking about just straight up drops. And the year before he had improved in that.
Yeah.
And then this past year he dropped so many picks.
I know.
But he made tons of plays on the ball. Every year he's been a Buc, he makes tons of plays on the ball.
Yep.
Last year he caught a bunch of them. This past year didn't catch as many of them, obviously.
4 interceptions, career high in 2020. Last year,
to be honest, is a pretty good number in today's NFL.
It is. Yeah, it really is.
A couple more too.
And he should have had 4 this year. He had 1. He dropped 3. He dropped 3 others.
Yeah, he definitely could have had more. Now, but a corner who consistently gets their hands on the ball, there's not much more you can ask for in today's NFL. Can be scheme diverse, gets their hands on the football, will come up and tackle. Yes, he missed too many tackles this year. Part of it was being out of the lineup for as long as he was. I think that affected him. Getting back to the speed, tackling is one of the hardest things I think to get back into.
Right.
But I think he's the real deal. There's no way that you can let this guy go. Tag him, sign him to a long-term contract after you tag him, before you tag him. I don't care. There's no way Carlton Davis can hit the market.
Yeah, I agree. And the great thing about Carlton Davis is first of all, it's hard to find number 1 corners, right? I mean, this team, they drafted Vernon Hargreaves in the 1st round. They've spent premium picks, Sean Murphy-Bunting in the 2nd round, Jamel Dean in the 3rd round. John, they even drafted 2 corners in 27 or 18 when they drafted Carlton Davis. He was the 2nd cornerback they drafted. They drafted MJ Stewart ahead of Carlton Davis, which was an epic fail by Jason Light, one of his few draft misses in the early rounds of the draft. But what a great recovery, right? If you're going to whiff on 1 2nd-round corner, you nail it.
That's why I bet there were people in that draft. I wasn't covering the Bucs then, Scott, but I bet there were people that said, "Why 2 corners in a row? We need this. We need this."
Right.
One of the most important positions on the field.
Yes.
Give yourself multiple attempts to get it right, because reality is, with the draft, no matter how good you are, you're going to miss on play. Everybody loved MJ Stewart. I mean, I didn't, but almost every draft guru out there loved him. They loved it. He was physical. He could play nickel. He could play inside. He played like a dime line.
He had a good week at the Senior Bowl. He was named one of the practice players of the week that week, and They liked his physicality, but the thing is, he's not an athletic player.
No.
Didn't have the speed and athleticism to keep up. Was not an outside corner. They tried him inside in the slot, and it was just an epic fail. But
Right.
again,
Yeah. But he gave himself options, right? And he
That's
got it
right.
right. And then the next year he did the same thing.
Yeah.
And he flooded it again. And that at those positions, it's made all the difference in the world for the
It
Bucs
has.
because Sean Murphy-Bunting hasn't been great, but Carlton Davis has been great. And now Jamel Dean's past season, very encouraging to me, Scott. The most consistently good play. And you heard it from Bruce Arians. He was toward the end of the year, he was very complimentary of the way Jamel Dean played. He called his game against the Eagles the best game of Jamel Dean's career as a Buccaneer.
Totally agree.
That's how highly he thought of him. Obviously, there's still a hiccup here or there with Jamel Dean. People always got to remember, though, if you're fans, what are you comparing it to? We're not comparing Jamel Dean to Jalen Ramsey. We know that's not the standard. We're not comparing him to Stephon Gilmore in his prime. We know that's not the case with him right now. But to the average starting cornerback in the NFL, absolutely better than the average starting cornerback in the NFL. So you go into next season, in my opinion, Scott, with Dean and Davis. Those are your starters. I'm not saying you don't bring anybody else or push them. Dean can, pushing Dean's always a good idea. But the way those two guys played last year when they were in the lineup, they look like a very good starting cornerback tandem. And I think the Bucs secondary is this young group that kind of emerged in the playoffs, then got decimated by injury last year. And then I think it could be a huge season for this group coming up.
It could. And really the X factor is it's those injuries, right? When you look at Jamel Dean, played in 15 games out of 17, but he also left early in a couple of those games, the Colts game, the Rams game, right? So you really factor in those games, and he was only healthy for 13 of the 17 games. Carlton Davis only played in 10 because of that quad injury. Then you had Sean Murphy-Bunting, who only played in 9 due to his injury, and which happened in week 1, right? I mean, he's playing against the Cowboys in week 1 and suffered that injury. So, I think they like this group. I also think they got the absolute crap scared out of them with regards to the injuries at the position. I mean, it wasn't just Sean Murphy-Bunting going out in week 1. It wasn't just Jamel Dean. It wasn't just Carlton Davis. It was, you had Dee Delaney who had a concussion. I mean, they had to play Ross Cockrell as a starting cornerback, which is not ideal, right? They had to bring in Richard Sherman. Then Sherman gets hurt, and it was just, you kind of felt for Ty Bowles, right? Because it's just he's trying to game plan against some of the league's best wide receivers on a weekly basis and some of the best quarterbacks.
Right.
And who's he going to have to start? Right. He goes into the Eagles game, and Richard Sherman is out there, and he gets hurt on the second play of the game, and then he's gone. So it was just this revolving door at cornerback. And John, I'm kind of with you. Here's the situation when it comes to the cornerback position in Tampa. You've got 3 guys that you have premium draft picks invested in. Second-round pick in Carlton Davis. You and I both think that smells like the franchise tag, if not a long-term deal for Carlton Davis, right? But he's going to be back. Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting are entering their contract years. And I agree with you. I loved how Dean really came on. And even when he was in the lineup, it was pretty consistent play. The only thing that led to some inconsistencies was just the injuries, right? It was a concussion. It was a knee. It was another injury that he had. I forgot what it was, but I think they like their guys, and probably the biggest question mark is around Sean Murphy-Bunting. But you've got 2 of those guys, Sean Murphy-Bunting and Jamel Dean, that are entering a contract year, right? And you can't fit your option those guys because they're second and third round picks respectively.
Right.
So you almost feel like they're going to draft a corner this year just to throw in the hopper, because I think one of those guys, either Dean or Sean Murphy-Bunting, is gone. If I had to say right now, I think Sean Murphy-Bunting is the guy that's gone. So they got to put another
not this year. You're saying
not this year,
2023. Yes.
Yeah. They'll let him go.
And maybe both. Maybe both. Depends.
Maybe both.
But maybe both. It depends. Here's the thing with guys like Dean and Davis, especially Dean. I mean, the dude has been like what he's had. Great games, but both of those guys are among the league leaders over the last several years, really since they entered the NFL, basically, in passes defensed.
Right.
Those almost always turn into a couple crazy interception high seasons because you are so consistently, the Bucs are so consistently thrown on, And I don't think that'll change a whole lot. Like they're going to be thrown at more than other teams in the league. Now, maybe not as much because the teams might not have to be catching up if they're not scoring as many points.
Right.
They're going to be thrown at a lot probably with how good their run defense is always. And those guys are going to get opportunities to intercept balls. And that's that was contract. Somebody said it earlier. He cost himself millions, Carlton, by dropping those balls. That's probably not crazy to say. I mean, it's too linear. The NFL shouldn't think that linear. But when it comes to picks, if you had a 4-pick season followed by a 5 or 6-pick season, especially considering the games you missed, he could add a 5-pick season. Like that's not that's not crazy to say if you look at his tape. And he could add a couple picks in the postseason too against the Eagles. Right. Those kind of things that registers for NFL teams a lot.
You're exactly right, John. We just got through having that fraud of a game we called the Pro Bowl, right, over this past weekend. But listen, I've had two of the best Buccaneers of all time tell me. Warren Sapp told me this. He says, pressures don't get you in the Pro Bowl, right? Sacks get you in the Pro Bowl. And when you've got Rondé Barber, who's the other one, told me, pass breakups don't get you in the Pro Bowl. Interceptions get you in the Pro Bowl. And what do Pro Bowls do? Pro Bowls get you paid, right? Because that's where the agent tells the team. It's, listen, my guy's a Pro Bowler. He deserves Pro Bowl money, right? And so, stats are for losers sometimes, but there's an accumulative effect here, right? And just like you said, when it comes to contracts, if Carlton Davis is a 4-interception guy, let's say he got 4 picks the previous year, which he did, and then last year, let's say he would have caught those balls, he had 4 interceptions. He's just getting paid at a higher rate because he's in the Pro Bowl, right? He's and now it's not is he a top 10 corner? Okay, well, is it closer to number 10 or is it closer to number 5, closer to number 1? So it makes a difference, and then there's a domino effect because the more money Carlton Davis takes up with his contract, the less money you have for other people. So
especially when you're going to pay Winfield. Winfield doesn't have the 50-year option. Even though he should have been a first-round pick, he was not a second-round pick, and so you have to think about if you're looking at your secondary just in terms of thinking about who you're going to pay, who you're going to replace. That's kind of how you.
And you know what, John?
Point by Leo too, that Dean made a glass, not reliable, always hurt. It's not necessarily been that he's missed a lot of time in his career. He hasn't, but there is the reality with Leo that it was like 5 or 6 different times he was down with an injury this past season and missed the next game or missed the rest of that game and came back the next week. So this is a concern with him going into next year. You, in my opinion, need to bring somebody else in. I don't think it has to be a first-round pick or second-round pick or a big-name free agent, but you have to have some other options at this position. Yeah,
I agree. And when you look traditionally at Jason Light, where he's drafted cornerbacks that have panned out. I mean, he had a 4th-round pick in Ryan Smith, who didn't pan out. He was a special teamer, and that's pretty much it. But the guys that he's drafted, Carlton Davis, 2nd rounder, Sean Murphy-Bunting, 2nd round, Jamel Dean, 3rd round, 1st-round pick invested in Vernon Hargraves. So it's been a premium type position for him. This year, I think the Bucs, John, they could get away with not drafting a cornerback in the early rounds using a premium pick, what we'll consider 1st, 2nd, 3rd round, day 1, day 2 guys. I think they could probably get away with not doing that this year, rolling with those guys and giving them the opportunity to see how they can stay healthy, how they can progress, especially Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting in their contract years. But at the same time, I just wonder if he's not shell-shocked by what happened last year. He and Todd Bowles and Bruce Arians aren't shell-shocked in saying, we don't want to have to go through the cornerback carousel again when we're reaching for the Pierre Desairs, the D. Delaney's. We want to get a guy in here that we like and that we know about. And, and that's why the first-round mock drafts are always tough, right? Because it's before Senior Bowl, it's before the East West Shrine, it's before the Combine. But one of the guys we had in there was Kobe Bryant, who was the cornerback, the other cornerback, not named Sauce Gardner at Cincinnati. And interestingly enough, this was the guy that was the Jim Thorpe Award winner. It wasn't even Sauce Gardner, who was the better cornerback at Cincinnati. But and I don't think he necessarily stole the show. He flashed a little bit at the Senior Bowl, but he wasn't a guy that really was a Senior Bowl standout. And that's okay because
he was solid. He was solid. Yeah. He wasn't one of the worst. Alontae Taylor from Tennessee was terrible. I'm trying to think through the other names of the corners that were there. I'll pull up some just to give people an idea. But there were a couple. Thompson, I'm trying to remember. It was Texas A&M, I believe. The corner, Josh Thompson, maybe.
There's the UTSA kid, Tariq Woolen.
Josh Thompson from Texas. I'm sorry. He's who I was thinking of.
Yeah.
He really struggled. No, Tariq Woolen, who we'll get to in a second. I see somebody in the chat mention him. He's actually who I want to talk about. But there's the whole conversation with the Bucs, Scott. If Dean and if Carlton Davis is back, and if he and Dean are your outside corners, do you draft a traditional nickel corner? It could honestly, like, is Jordan Whitehead coming back? Because like you could do Winfield more in the slot if you feel like you trust Mike Edwards more after this past year, and you trust Whitehead, obviously, if he's back, and you want to run more 3 safeties and have more, like you could play Edwards in the slot and Winfield and exchange them. But what's the plan there? Like, is it just SMB? Are you just going to trust him to be your full-time nickel?
Right.
Do you want to bring in a true, like a Jalen Petrie type of player from Baylor who was at the Senior Bowl?
Him.
Right. But he's not a typical.
Right.
He's not a typical Bucs player in terms of corner.
Exactly.
But in terms of safety, like they don't have the size requirement. Winfield and Whitehead are both small safeties.
Yeah.
They want physical guys who can play around the line of scrimmage. No question Petrie can do that. What do you have, 100 tackles for loss at Baylor? So that's one of the big struggles is not necessarily figuring out what players we like, but it's figuring out what the Bucs are going to do. Like, how do they treat the nickel position? Do they keep treating it like, we don't have to have a nickel specific guy, or do they want to change something that they've done?
Well, the thing is, I think that they like Sean Murphy-Bunting as that nickel guy, right? And
he's bad at it.
But he's bad at it, exactly. Yes, and you're right. That presents probably the biggest challenge right now for the Buccaneers, John, is of the 3 corners, right? Who is the weakest link? Who is the guy that you would want to draft a replacement for? Well, it's not Carlton Davis, because you're going to franchise him or give him a big, huge starting cornerback deal. It might be Dean, but Dean is only an outside corner. He is not a slot corner. The guy that you're thinking about replacing is Sean Murphy-Bunting, who can play outside, but because Dean is better than him and Davis is better than him, he's the slot guy. And
so how important is inside-outside flexibility in their next corner? Because I don't believe Kobe Bryant has that, and I don't
agree.
By the way, we say Kobe Bryant, we're talking about Cincinnati cornerback Kobe Bryant. He does have the same name spelled differently.
Yes.
I don't believe he has that, and there's a lot of corners
coming
from college that don't. Honestly, Sean Murphy-Bunting nobody would have called him a slot corner coming out.
Yeah,
and
he played some in the slot.
It hasn't worked.
Yeah, he played some in the slot at Central Michigan, but that was not like his premier position. He was an outside corner who did play some in the slot. So you're right. And the other thing, John, is when you look at with the Bucs put a premium on size at the cornerback position.
Mm-hmm.
I was told by somebody in the know who's in the decision-making process that they're done drafting smaller corners. Like Vernon Hargraves totally turned them off because he got big boy way too much at 5'10". They're done with corners. So you're not going to see them draft a cornerback who's shorter than 6 feet tall. And Sean Murphy-Bunting is 6 foot. Carlton Davis is 6'1" and some change. So is Jamel Dean, and they've got longer arms. So the problem is when you look at a guy like Roger McCreary, who is a very good corner from Auburn, he is 5'10", and he is a guy that will play in the slot and play really well, but doesn't have that ideal size. And at the same time, when they had to play Antoine Winfield in the slot, that was not ideal from a size standpoint. You even saw on the last play, and that wasn't, his 5'9" size didn't have much to do with that Cooper Kupp catch. But Cooper Kupp is 6'2", and Antoine Winfield is 5'9". It didn't matter on the interception for Michael Pittman, right? When Winfield skied up and grabbed that.
Because he's an elite tier athlete, but Mike Edwards is not an elite tier athlete. That changes things. Size matters less when you're moving faster, hitting harder as a result of moving faster, able to leap higher, all those things. Your size can be offset when you're that good of an athlete. But when you're a middling athlete like Edwards and a middling size, and even Whitehead to a degree is kind of the same. Yeah, so they haven't really prioritized size at safety. And intrigues me a lot when it comes about Petrie. We'll talk more about safety necessarily tomorrow, but there could be some crossover between corner and safety because of the indecision kind of in the way that they see it. And you know what?
You're right, John. You're onto it there, because what happened this past year was it forced the Buccaneers, when all these corners are dropping like flies. And the thing is keep in mind, when you go in the street and you find a guy like a Richard Sherman or a Pierre Desser or D. Delaney was in-house, but he was the last guy on the totem pole. The guys they had to bring in were outside corners because their outside corners got hurt. It was Jamel Dean. It was Carlton Davis. And that's usually where teams' better wide receivers line up, is on the outside. So that's why we're talking about a Kobe Bryant, because they might need a guy to have in the hopper in case an injury happens to Davis or Dean. They can stick in there. They don't want to put Sean Murphy-Bunting outside. He's not that effective outside. So that's why there's the need for maybe an outside corner. That's why you've seen some of these mock drafts have a bigger guy like a Kyer Elam from Florida, right? He's a big 6'2" corner that kind of fits that outside mold. But then the thing is if you're looking at replacing the weaker link, Sean Murphy-Bunting, you need a guy that can play inside and outside, that can do what Sean Murphy-Bunting does, because he might be the guy you're replacing. So one of the guys that I've really had my eye on is Kyler Gordon from Washington. Now, Trent McDuffie played some in the slot, and he's probably their better corner. This guy, and I'm friends with Jimmy Lake, the former coach at Washington, who recruited a lot of these guys. He's a defensive back guru. The athleticism Kyler Gordon has is crazy. He's just kind of a late bloomer to the position, because he was a starter in 2019, and of course he was in 2020, but that was the COVID shortened season. They only played 4 games out there in the Pac-12. He was only healthy for 3. So in 2020, remember, JTS didn't even play. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka sat out 2020. But Kyler Gordon played in 3 games, but he didn't have any interceptions until this past season, where he had 7 pass breakups and 2 interceptions. He forced a fumble. He is a very athletic guy, and he's got the size that you're looking for to be able to play inside at 6 foot, 200 pounds. So that's a guy in the late first, early second, depending on how he tests, that would be a better option than Kobe Bryant, because Bryant is strictly kind of an outside corner. So you've got some more positional flexibility with a guy like Gordon.
Right. And one-on-ones are tough for corners in the Senior Bowl, but I will say this wasn't a great group of wideouts. So to see some of these guys struggle was pretty concerning at the Senior Bowl. And there were definitely some that really struggled. I mentioned Josh Thompson, who is probably actually under the Bucs size. He's good long arms, but he's only 5'10". So there's some guys like that. The other interesting thing, you mentioned Roger McCreary. We'll probably get a ton of questions about Roger McCreary going up to the draft, Scott, because he's an Auburn guy. Here's the thing. Roger McCreary straight up said at the Senior Bowl, that was his first time playing zone coverage. He just never played it at Auburn. They didn't do it at all, he said. It was always zone match, and you ended up man-to-man, or you just pure man-to-man. So he had no clue what he was doing. His own words, Trevor told me this. Like, Trevor Sikkema and I were talking at the Senior Bowl. He said McCreary told him, I never done this, so this is totally new to me. I was I'm not going to have a good week of practice because it's totally new to me, but I'm ready to learn it. The Bucs obviously play a lot of zone coverage.
Right.
It doesn't mean they won't draft him. It just means he won't be an impact player right away, a little more than likely. It takes time to learn and get a feel for zone. Jamel Dean's had to learn it, but it's taken 3 years. He talked about it this year.
Yes.
He came from Auburn as well, and I think things were different. Dean did play some in college, but it's still mostly man scheme, and he had to learn, obviously, zone basically in Tampa Bay to a large degree, and honestly is still learning it. He's I don't care what his PFF grades say. He's better.
And the thing is Todd Bowles likes to play man to man. He likes to play press man, but he does that when he's got it's a changeup. Yeah, I mean, he likes to do it when he's got all the starters out there, right? Because he doesn't want to play press man with D. Delaney. He doesn't want to play press man with Richard Sherman, who's 33, or with Pierre Desser. So he was a bit hamstrung by who was out there, but he shares the same philosophy Todd Bowles does, as did Monty Kiffin. Remember, back in the day with the Tampa 2 defense, they played zone, right? That was pretty much what Tampa played. But Monty Kiffin drafted man corners, Rondé Barber, Donnie Abraham, Brian Kelly. And what, I remember asking, Monty, I said, why are you drafting all these man coverage corners to play in Tampa 2 zone? And he said, because obviously we use man coverage as a changeup. And he said, it's so much easier to have a guy that can play man and have the athleticism to do that with that background, to teach them zone, rather than to take a zone corner from college and try to teach him man. And he said, man, because it's such an athletic thing, it's what Raheem Morris called cat coverage. You got that cat, I got this cat, and wherever he goes, you go, right? And so if you're looking at strictly zone corners in college, you don't get a real read and a bead on their athleticism. Can they take a guy on a shallow crosser across the field, and can he stay in that guy's hip pocket all the way across the field? Does he have the speed and athleticism, the agility, to do that, or to go on a go route and man coverage 45 yards down the field? So I hear you, John, and that's kind of why it's important for them, and that's why I think they like these Auburn corners, is because they do play a lot of man. They don't play a lot of zone, so you can already check that box. When Todd Bowles wants to go to press man, guys like Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis, they feel at home. They're like, oh, cool, we got this.
Right. Yeah. No, it's interesting to think about, because there are layers to both of them, obviously, but I think there will be options for the Bucs at corner in this draft, and all rounds of the draft. It's supposed to be a good corner class. We learn a lot about corners after they test. There are not many slow corners that are good in the NFL. It's just very, very rare. So there will be some guys eliminated. I remember Cam Dantzler. That's right. 2 years ago, everybody's like, oh, he played Jamar Chase tougher than anybody in the country, and it was okay, but it wasn't that tough. And then he ran 4.6, 4.7. Yeah, and he's been okay for the Vikings, but he ain't letting up, and he's gonna get replaced at some point. Like those guys, just he was like, oh, he could be a late first round. Then he ran that. And it's like, all right, I don't know where he went.
You know what, John? Same thing with Jonathan Banks when Greg Schiano and Mark Dominic drafted him.
He was a Thorpe guy too, right?
Yep, Jim Thorpe Award winner. Had like 6 interceptions, I think 2 or 3 pick sixes his last year at Mississippi State. He was a ball hawk. I mean, statistically, you loved the guy. You liked his length. He was 6'2", long arms. But he was a 4.6 guy, right?
Yeah. And
it's like that worked in college, but when everyone's at the NFL level,
you got to be special. They're not. You can look at the track record, mockdraftable.com, and they're just. I take them off my board, honestly, at a certain point. And you might Mitch on Richard Sherman. I forget what he exactly ran. Actually, I don't want to slander boy, but like almost everybody has not been good in the NFL that ran. So anyway, that'll eliminate some people. We got a good question here from Alex, $5 super chat. What about avoiding the draft altogether, signing Mackenzie Alexander for the slot, and keeping SMB on the boundary in a reserve role? Possibility, Alex. Again, we go back to the thing. Are the Bucs going to keep just saying we're going to sign big corners, draft big corners, prioritize big corners that are position flex? We don't really care because we play more zone than man, whether they're able to man anybody up on the slot or not. It's not a big deal to us. Or are they going to say, you know what? We need to go man more often. We need somebody who can man up the slot. It's been killing us for seasons. We got to change what we're doing. Last year, coming off the Super Bowl, harder to look at it. SMB had a couple picks. Harder to look at it and say, oh, we're going to change what we're doing.
Right.
This year, coming off the way things ended, the secondary getting torched again, torched by a lot of good quarterbacks when they win those matchups. Maybe it's easier for them to look at things and be like, all right, we're going to change some of the things we're doing. So we probably won't know that until the draft. We'll try to know it if we get a chance to talk to Todd Bowles and Jason Light, but we might not know it until the draft. So I like Mackenzie Alexander. I didn't see him at all this past year. I don't know how he played this past year, but I like Mackenzie. I was a big fan of Mackenzie Alexander coming out. He's made a good career for himself as a good nickel corner. But free agency is going to be tricky, Scott. I don't know if you are ready to jump there. Or did you want anybody to touch on anybody else from the draft?
Well, I think that when you look at one of my favorite players is Sauce Gardner, and I don't think he's going to be there. I think this guy is a pretty special player. Number 1 there, he was playing opposite Kobe Bryant, who's number 7. And that was a nice 1-2 punch.
He's such a Bucs type of player because he's so physical.
He's the dream, man. He's the dream. He can blitz from the corner. Very physical guy, long, lanky, great size, great instincts. Did not give up a single touchdown, John, in 3 years as a starter. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like you look at a player like Kobe Bryant. He gave up, I think, 3 touchdowns each season, but then he also had a lot of interceptions. He had 9 picks, 35 pass breakups, and 4 forced fumbles. So those are 2 productive guys there at Cincinnati. I do like Kyler Gordon. I haven't really done the deep dive on the position past the first and second and third round guys. We had a question here. Is Martin Emerson, Jonathan Banks 2.0? I'm not a huge Martin Emerson fan. They both played at Mississippi State, but
I haven't watched Martin Emerson. I don't know anything about him, but I don't.
Yeah,
Can
he's
you
a
be a
longer
good
corner.
corner with the name Martin Emerson? I mean, it sounds like a scientist.
Yeah.
I'm a big name scouting guy, Scott. I don't.
I know.
Martin Emerson. Oh yeah, we're taking Martin Emerson shutdown corner.
Yeah.
I don't know if that works, man. Like, I
Yeah.
think you got
He's
to have
he's
a
going to intern in
swaggier
the
name.
accounting department, during
Yeah,
the
like
summer after
we're
training camp.
really trying
Yeah.
to compare this dude to Sauce Gardner and Kyler
Exactly.
Gordon. I mean, those are
Yeah. Kobe
freaking
Bryant,
awesome names. Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Come on, like
Right.
you can't be out here.
Kobe.
You can't be out here, Martin Emerson.
I
Like,
know.
I'm trying to be
Exactly.
shouting, yeah, Kobe,
Yeah.
Kyler.
Right.
Like that's a real,
Well, Robert Gordon, he wants to see Kyler Gordon get
yeah,
drafted by the Bucs because he wants to have a Gordon Bucs
right,
jersey and it
right,
not just be Robert Gordon's name.
right.
He wants Kyler Gordon to wear that. We appreciate that super chat
Yeah,
very much.
that makes a lot of sense. I
It
like that.
does. It most certainly does.
All right, I one thing to say. Somebody brought up Tariq Woolen, and I am very intrigued. He was actually pretty solid at the
Yeah.
Senior Bowl. I mean, no corner there stole the show.
Right.
Don't care what anybody's trying to tell you. No corner there stole the show,
Yeah.
and it's concerning because the group of wideouts, like I said, was not that
Yeah.
compelling overall. We're talking about mostly day 3 guys.
Mhm.
Shout out Christian Watson though. But Tariq Woolen, 6'3", 205, 33.5-inch arms. I
Long
guess
dude.
McShay's got him up there. He's
Yeah.
he's 79-inch wingspan for a corner.
Mhm.
Pretty wild. I'm intrigued. Texas San Antonio kid. Got to see how they all test. Going to be important. Speed's going to be crucial for him. But
He's supposed to fly too. He was one of the fastest players with the zebra speed tracking at the Senior Bowl. So he was up there, I think, in the top 4, top 5. And the interesting thing about him is very much like Richard Sherman, right? He's got that long build, right? 6'3", long arms, fast guy. He started off as a wide receiver at UTSA. Now, if you're not familiar with UTSA is, that's University of Texas San Antonio. That's the Roadrunners. So they're one of the newer teams. They've been around for a while, but they're not like the Longhorns or the Texas Tech Red Raiders or the Texas A&M Aggies. It's a smaller school, but UTSA, they're in Conference USA, started off as a wide receiver, had 8 catches for 150 yards. I'm sorry, 15 catches, 158 yards and a touchdown as a freshman, 9 catches for 105 yards as a sophomore, was really going nowhere fast there. So they move him to defense to take advantage of that length. And in 2 seasons, he's had a pair of interceptions, 9 pass breakups, a sack and a half. So he is an interesting player that really had Mobile buzzing. Maybe not so much for his dominance out there, because like you said, nobody dominated, but boy, he's got kind of the physical makeup of what you're looking for. And I think he's going to be one of those players that is really going to have a lot of the scouts waiting to see how he tests at the combine, right, John?
Yeah, for sure. No question. When you have those kind of measurements and you have a pretty solid Senior Bowl, everybody's going to be watching to see how you show up in the combine and how you stack up, especially small school guys. It's crucial for them. People love the feel good story, Scott, but you're not a small school guy that tests bad most of the time and end up being a good player at almost any position, but especially at corner, wide out, like those positions, or edge rusher, those positions that require a certain level of athleticism. Like that, it's really important for those guys to test well. So I'm a big believer in the combine. I don't throw obviously tape first, but I'm a big believer in the combine. Not necessarily if you test great, you're going to be great. Not that way, but if you test poorly, it eliminates you. Like statistically, it should be an eliminator for you and move guys down or off boards because of it. So that's why,
John, that's a great point. And we're going to be at the combine. Pewter Report's going to be there. The combine does 2 things. If a player stands out athletically, it does 3 things. Number 1, it confirms, right? If you have a high grade or mid grade on a player and they do what you expect, it confirms that grade for that player.
Right.
Number 2, if a player really excels, if a wide receiver just blows the doors off the barn with a fast 40 time, it might cause you to go back and look at the tape and say, okay, well, was he playing with a crappy quarterback that just couldn't get him the ball? Is that why the production wasn't there? It causes some curiosity. Let's go back and look at this guy. And then number 3, like you said, John, this is a big thing. It is an eliminator, right? If you're an outside linebacker, an edge rusher, and you have a slow 40 time, but boy, you really are super slow in your first 10 yards, cross you right off the list. So there are certain type of drills at the combine that really
Yeah,
accentuate that for cornerbacks. It's not just the 40 time, John. What are the other drills that you look
I think
for?
the 40 is the biggest predictor for corners, in terms of like we talk about edge rushers. The 40 matters. You can just in terms of hitting certain thresholds. It doesn't have to be fast, just can't be this slow, for example.
Right.
Like there's tight end has the same thing, wide receiver, some of those but corners, like having actual speed, like being 4.42 and not 4.58, 4.56 is actually very helpful, especially in terms of scheme diversity. Like you might be fine as a 4.56 corner in certain schemes, what certain defenses ask you to do. I mean, look, the Bills just had the best defense in the league, and they had two corners who can't run at all after Trey White went down. So like you can get by with it in certain schemes and certain ways that teams play, but it shrinks the pool of teams and schemes. So you're less likely to be drafted high then. So it does affect those things. But for corner, those are important things. Like the 3 cone, for example, it's always good to be agile. It's always good to test well. It doesn't necessarily make you a bad corner because of the 3 cone. A lot of cornerback movements are very unique to just playing corner in an NFL setting. So even like side to side movement necessarily, you're not necessarily always doing that. You're turning, you're flipping your hips, you're running vertically, you're coming out of your pedal and you're breaking back to the ball. So jumps help. It always helps to be more athletic, but I wouldn't say any of the other drills really rule a corner out or hurt them tremendously unless they're like horrible athlete. Just
what are your thoughts on like the 3 cone drill being more important for somebody who's going to be playing in the slot or would have the ability to play in the slot? Does that agility there, because so many times you're going up against a slot receiver who's taking 2 steps and then cutting hard left, cutting hard right, with either it's a crossing route or an out.
Yeah, I mean, it always helps to be more athletic. Like I said, like that's always true. I wouldn't say that it's necessary. Like if you're a mid-level 3 cone tester at corner, it shouldn't be
That's acceptable.
Penalty. Yeah, it shouldn't. Okay. It shouldn't. There's no data that shows that it has a negative effect on your NFL career. That 3 cone. Now, as an edge rusher, it's a critical drill because think about what the 3 cone does. It's that L drill. So you're bending around edges. You're not necessarily changing direction side to side. That's the shuttle, but you're bending around an arc basically, which for an edge rusher is very similar to and mimics greatly the movement that they have as a pass rusher. So it's a very important drill for edge rushers. So are 10, so are jumps. I mean, testing might be more important for edge rushers, honestly, than any other position, in my opinion. But yeah, just being able to be fast enough at corner and wide receiver and some of those other positions, like there's been guys at all positions that I've had to move off of because they just the testing combined with the age, combined with the lack of production, you take those factors and you need the tape to be overwhelmingly positive, better than other players in order to overlook some of those other factors. Always tape first, but you can't have really good tape and then be super old. You're 24, 25 years old. Your production's terrible. Like your percentage of your team's production is bad. Your testing's bad. Oh, but he looked great on tape. Then you end up with Calvin Harmon. You know what I mean? Like, and everybody loved him. He tests poorly. Nobody wanted to come off him, myself included. We all got burnt. Like now we had him ahead of Deebo Samuel and we look like fools. That's what ends up happening if you don't take that stuff seriously.
From Tom Bucs fan, I wish we had drafted Trey Hendrickson as a defensive end, played at FAU, also Conference USA. You just talking about edge rushers, and we were talking about Conference USA. This was a guy that I absolutely loved at the East-West Shrine. He dominated at the East-West Shrine. He was a standout player. Went to Florida Atlantic. And
if the Bucs wouldn't have drafted him in this year either, because they're not drafting guys who don't play the run or don't play the run.
Exactly.
They're just not doing it.
Yeah.
So.
But this is a guy that has proven that 13 sack season wasn't a fluke in New Orleans. He can get to the quarterback. Real quick, another super chat from William Butler. We appreciate it. How early do we draft a corner? That's kind of what John and I were talking about. I think there's going to be other needs, right? Defensive tackle. Obviously, it depends on free agency. How many roles can you fill with your cap room?
I don't think it'll be in the first round, though. Yeah, I don't think it'll be in the first round.
I don't think so either.
Because all 3 of those guys are back, and you're not totally out on SMB. You're not trying to cut SMB. You might be trying to push him for playing time. But if I were me, Scott, I would sign a veteran for cheap, and I would draft somebody at the point in the draft where you felt like the board fell. I wouldn't let anything deter you from drafting one. If there's a great player you love in the first round, take him. It's one of the most important positions in the league. You cannot have too many guys.
If Sauce Gardner slips down to number 27,
and if he's not ready, you make him your CB5 to start the season. Like you got to do it. You got to do it. Like, but you might need him to be your CB2 next year. You know what I mean? Or one if Carlton's playing on the franchise tag.
Right.
So it's a position that whoever they draft, it doesn't really matter. As long as they feel like that player can help them eventually, it doesn't have to be year one. It shouldn't be year one. I mean, those three we mentioned should play, and there should be a veteran involved. I don't think it'll be necessarily Ross Cockrell. He could be back, but it could be, we'll get to a couple of names here in a second, but I don't think it has to be an early priority. If there's a great player there, obviously take them. I'm always about best.
I think the only thing that would give me some pause about this is how shell-shocked did they get at the cornerback position to where they draft one early. I'm with you, John. I don't think they draft one in the first round, but is the temptation there in the second round? And that's where, again, MJ Stewart, Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting have been drafted. That's a hot zone for Jason Light. He puts a premium on the cornerback position, and we've talked about the future need in 2023 to have one in the hopper. But did he get so shell-shocked that he's going to end up drafting one this year? Or is he going to prioritize a wide receiver that if you draft a wide receiver in the second round, that could be your starter. That could be a starter this year in your three wide receiver sets opposite Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
You're rarely going to hear me complain about drafting a corner or a pass rusher or, in most cases, a wide receiver. Like those three positions, obviously, you got to have your quarterback, you got to have your line right in terms of the players, but in terms of volume, you can be deep at wideout, deep at corner, and deep at pass rusher, whatever they are play along the D line, as you want to be, and you're not going to hear me complaining. So they can stockpile up for all I care. If it's a first round, great. Obviously you want to prioritize who's on the board and look at who's on the board, but it should be a consideration every year for every team in every round, pretty much drafting corners, because you can't have enough good ones. If you have a good one playing cheap, and there's tons of good ones every year come out in the draft. So get yourself one of those guys and you'll end up being good. Let's talk about some free agents. But first, before we do that, speaking of money and spending money in free agency, Scott, I know that there's a place people can do that, especially this Sunday coming up as the Rams and the Bengals meet in the Super Bowl. Tell our friends about the good old bets that they can put down with MyBookie.
Yep, that's right, John. And there's one place to go if you're going to do any wagering, and that is our partners at MyBookie. Now, your team, the Buccaneers, might have missed a big game this year, but MyBookie's double deposit bonus makes sure that you won't miss the big game. Sign up at MyBookie today using promo code Pewter to have your first deposit matched instantly, so you can get on all the action of Super Bowl 56. The only way watching the game could be any bigger or any better is to get paid for doing it. And really, that's what MyBookie's doing here. They're doubling your money with your first deposit. And they want you to do this for the big game because there's tons of Super Bowl prop bets, whether it's on the field or off the field. There's no shortage of wagers to choose from for the Super Bowl. So get in on all the action, let the confetti fall, and walk away a winner. Don't miss out. Head to MyBookie, double your first deposit up to $1,000 with the promo code Pewter. Place your bets and get ready for the unmatched excitement of Super Bowl 56. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Okay, here's a couple free agents that I have, Scott, to consider. Casey Hayward thought his career was over. Watched Tom Brady shred him in 2020 when he was a Charger. That second half comeback, Casey Hayward caught all the smoke. Couldn't run with Scotty. It looked like it was over. My boy had one more in him. He came back last year, signed with the Raiders at the last minute, 32, 1 year, $2.5 million flyer. He played well last year. Honestly, really did. I'm not saying the Bucs should, if his price tag goes up, obviously the Bucs shouldn't pay him any more than that. But if you're looking for who's going to be your Ross Cockrell fill-in, but give you legitimate outside snaps if Dean goes down, which obviously he did a lot last year, or Davis goes down like he did last year, to be your veteran guy who comes in a la Richard Sherman, what they tried to do last year. Like that's going to be that guy. I think Casey Hayward could be that guy. So one name to think about as a cheap 1 year veteran depth for them if they want that. The other guy I'd think about, Charvarius Ward from the Chiefs. Like this has been a good player, and he's played well against Bucs. Nobody talks about this dude. He started for basically 4 years for the Chiefs. I don't know what his price tag is going to be because he doesn't churn out crazy production or anything, but he tackles. He's very physical. He's very aggressive. He plays his tail off. His college coach, his college defensive coordinator hit me up when he was coming out of college. I was doing the draft full time then, and he was like, "Hey, watch this guy. Watch this guy. I'm telling you, watch this guy." It is. I have a ton of college coaches, and agents and hit me up every draft season because I have draft in my Twitter handle. So like everybody just finds me and then sends me. So I did engage with this guy. I did chat with him a little bit, but it's not uncommon for that to happen. And I only have so much time to get to so many players. I wish I had made more time to get to Charvarius Ward, and I would reprioritize things if I could go back, because he was absolutely right. This guy ended up being a good player, a baller. He earned his way there. I don't know what the Chiefs are going to do, though. They've let a lot of corners walk, and they've kind of treated it as a position that they can just recharge and everything. I have no idea what he's going to cost. Pro Football Focus is a high projection, $9.5 million per year.
Yeah,
I don't know that I see him talked about in those circles like that. We'll see.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we're looking at a 1-year deal, right? We're looking at it if they're going to bring in a guy.
Maybe they're looking at a guy to come in and push both of them and maybe compete and play. And maybe, I don't know exactly what it is, but it is one of the challenges, Scott, is figuring out what exactly are they looking for, because they probably don't want an old player, a super old player.
Right.
And they might need a number 1 or number 2 guy in a year. So what do they want to bring in and how much they want to spend for it? It is tricky to figure out how they're going to evaluate these positions.
It's going to be really interesting to see exactly what this offseason, how they feel about Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis in terms of the health of those. I mean, listen, you couldn't find anyone in the building who wasn't praising the Gravediggers, right? When the confetti was falling, and they beat the Chiefs 31-9. I mean, Sean Murphy-Bunting was the darling of the postseason in 2020 with 3 interceptions in 3 straight games, a big pass breakup in the end zone. And you had, Carlton Davis, 4 interceptions that season. Jamel Dean was kind of coming on, and earlier in that year, he had a huge game-changing pick 6 against Aaron Rodgers. It helped them come back and beat the Packers. So much has changed from that Super Bowl, starting in week 1 with that injury to Sean Murphy-Bunting. And so these injuries that have cost the front office, this team scouts, valuable time in terms of evaluating, right? And it's you get these injuries, it's like you look at some players, John. Rondé Barber did not miss a start, and I think the last 13 years of his career, okay? And Ndamukong Suh has not missed a start outside of being suspended. He's never missed a game due to injury. Right. Some players just are blessed with Iron Man status. And some guys are Mr. Glass, right? They earn that kind of Mr. Glass nickname. And so I think Carlton Davis has been pretty injury free. But the thing is what happens next year if Jamel Dean misses 4 or 5 games? What happens next year if Carlton Davis or Sean Murphy-Bunting start missing some games? It really throws a big monkey wrench into the team's long-term plans, because they got to be able to count on it. I mean, Dirk Cutter didn't get a lot of things right in Tampa, but the one thing that he kind of conveyed to me, and he didn't coin the phrase, he just used it, and it really kind of sunk into me, is the greatest ability in football is availability. You can't help but up in the tub. It's like, are you out there on the field helping your team? And if you are, then you're valuable. And if you're on the bench, if you're hurt, if you're on IR, you're not.
Right. And so we'll see how they treat it. I mean, again, I don't know how much stock they're putting in. Dean just got unlucky a bunch of times this year. It's not like he's missed a ton of time in his career, had serious injury concerns or anything like that. So we'll just have to see how they treat it. The good news is there's no shortage of depth options at corner. Like there's Joe Hayden popping up every year. There's Haywards, there's lots of players like that. And there's nickels. Nickels are available and you can get them for cheap. It's really more about the long-term direction of the position. This year, they should have plenty of talented bodies in the room. Long-term, what's the plan? Can they lock Carlton up so they have at least one guy? Is Dean your guy beyond that? I just don't know. I mean, so that there's a lot of uncertainty with how, and what they do at nickel is a lot of this is based on, like, do they just keep riding with Sean Murphy-Bunting even though it clearly don't work? Or are they going to try and get a true nickel into their defense? That's what we just don't know yet. Yeah.
Well, speaking of we don't know, yesterday we talked about, I wrote a story about this. We talked about it on the podcast. Mike Caldwell, Bucs inside linebackers coach, going to Jacksonville to reunited with Doug Peterson. But wait, hold on, folks. A Buccaneer coach leaving for the Jaguars? Not so fast, my friend. Gerald Alexander from the Dolphins is interviewing with Jacksonville. So there were reports that Caldwell was going to be the guy. Mike Garofalo reported that. And I checked with the Buccaneers yesterday, and they said, we haven't even gotten any requests from the Jaguars to even interview Mike Caldwell. And then they finally did in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And then I guess Caldwell has interviewed, but he's not the only game in town apparently. So I'm not sure.
This was NFL Network's report too.
I know
that they were, and then they walked it back sort of like 20 minutes later. I guess I didn't see it as a walk back at the time, but they were like, there's still some things up in the air. It could be a while before they announce the hire. I'm like,
yeah.
So he is the hire or he's not the hire? Because
exactly.
Like the first tweet by Garofalo definitely made it seem like he was going to be hired.
Some of these national guys are really jumping the gun, right? I mean,
hey, look, we're not complaining because we got to write about something these days. But like,
right.
I mean, bring him in for 100 more interviews. We don't care. We'll write.
Just let us know. Is he staying in Tampa or is he going? Right. That's what we want. Is just the truth. And I mean, poor Byron Leftwich, right? He was thought to be the guy, and he was going to be the guy, and then he wasn't the guy. So, long last lasers, Jacksonville should forfeit a 4th round pick to us for just teasing our coaches all season. Listen, folks, so Jaguars are going to Jaguar, man. That's my latest phrase.
Right.
So I did see this right here. Do we get a draft pick for the Caldwell hire? No. That only works for head coaches or executives. So if you have a minority assistant who leaves to become a coordinator elsewhere, the NFL policy does not reward or benefit the team for developing that particular player. However, if a coordinator or position coach goes to become a head coach, or a front office person, an executive goes to become a general manager, that's when the draft pick, the compensatory draft picks kick in. So not for coordinators, but only for head coaches. Buccaneers, John, they could have had an extra 3rd round pick if only Byron Leftwich would have gotten that Jacksonville Jaguars job.
Right. Could have. But I'm glad Leftwich is apparently back now. We haven't really talked about that on the show. We were like, yeah, he's gone. He's basically gone. And then it was like, oh, nope, Jaguars are never going to hire a head coach. And then they hired one and it wasn't him. So
I know.
One of the biggest shockers I can remember, honestly. I think even
former
the Bucs were
coach
shocked, weren't they?
Lovie Smith gets the head coaching job in Houston.
Here's a question for you. When you covered Lovie Smith and Raheem Morris, did you ever think that Lovie Smith was going to get a 3rd head coaching opportunity before Raheem Morris got another one?
That's criminal.
Never would have bet on that, I bet.
Yeah. I mean, I just said Jaguars going to jag. I mean, the Texans are going to Texan, man. It's like there are 3 franchises in the running for the absolute shittiest team in the NFL. And it's the Detroit Lions, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And the Houston Lions Texans. Might be it's Washington's got to be up there. Let's just be.
Oh, yeah, Washington. Yeah, the Washington
might be
Commandos, Commodores, whatever their name is.
Detroit might be turning over new leaf, Scott.
I hope so. I feel bad for Detroit. I hope so. I'm a big Dan Campbell guy, so I like the energy he brings. I hope it's the case. But the problem is they had Jared Goff at quarterback, man. It's
they need a lot of things for sure. But I think structurally, they've made some good decisions since the new regime came in. So we'll see. But there's some Jaguars, Texans.
Listen, Lovie Smith, he didn't like me very much. I mean, I called for him to be fired. I wrote about that.
Yeah, when you do that, it usually
kind of sours the relationship a little bit, which I understand. I'm just doing my job. I've got nothing personal against Lovie Smith. I just don't think he's a good coach. I just don't.
I think he had so much success at Illinois. It's hard to argue with the Texans' decision.
John, he had the 31st ranked defense in Houston last year. The 31st ranked defense. Okay.
I know he didn't have talent, but it's still. Are we going to wait till the new group is good to promote? Or
listen. I'm just saying, the Houston Texans. I'm not going to get into the whole racial political thing or whatever, but Brian Flores should have been the coach there. Yeah. He just should have been. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if
it felt like he's the guy they needed, really.
Yes.
And he'd worked with Casario.
I know.
It's a mess. Let's tell people about how they can help us out at Pewter Report, Scott. They can do this right now. They can help us out right now at pewterreport.com. You can go to this link here, pewterreport.com/donation, and help support all the work that we're doing. We're still cranking the content, the draft content. We're watching tape. We're doing all those things this offseason. We're trying to do eventually we want to launch into some YouTube stuff too. But we need help to be able to do some of these things, to be able to justify spending some money on some of the things that we need to be able to do some of these things, like watching prospects, going live and watching prospects and studying tape and having you all come in and ask questions and comments. That's something I want to do this offseason for the Bucs and for draft prospects. But being able to pay our people, our staff, more as well,
Yep.
so they can come help us produce a lot of this
Just
stuff.
got
That's a
back
big
from the
part of it.
Senior Bowl, getting ready
Yeah.
to go to the combine, so we've got some
Yep.
travel expenses. So
Exactly. All
it
those things, all your donations go right
yes.
back to the show and to the work that we do on the site. When those donations come in, we look at it every month and we say, oh, we've got enough. We can start investing in this, in X, in Z, all these different types of things. That's
Yep.
why we've grown, is a large part because the donations obviously are awesome advertisers as well. There's lots of ways, but this is a big reason for the growth of Pewter Report. So we do definitely seriously appreciate when y'all are able to give, whether it's super chats on here, through the donation function here. It's
Greatly
awesome
appreciate
for us. Yeah.
it. It really is. And the great thing, John, is when you go to pewterreport.com/donation, you have the option where you can donate as low as $3 a month, right, and become a monthly donor. Or you can do a one-time donation for as little as $10. So if you like the Bucs briefing that was out today on pewterreport.com, great job by John diving into those defensive tackles. If you like the Pewter Report podcast shows, if you like the SR's Fab Five, no, I was not campaigning for Blaine Gabbert, just spitting out some truth about
I
what
think that's what you wrote.
um, it was a very well read Fab Five. I'll tell you that.
That's good. Hey, that's good.
If you like our mock drafts, we're going to have another mock draft in a matter of days, a post Senior Bowl mock draft. So if you like these stories, if you like our content on pewterreport.com and here on our Pewter Report YouTube channel, which is called Pewter Report TV, and you want to give us like an internet tip, think of that link as our internet tip jar, where you can go in and give us a high five and attaboy for the good work that we do here, not just myself and John, but also Matt Matera, JC Allen, Casey Hudson. So we greatly appreciate that. And Paul Atwell as well. Speaking of our YouTube channel, make sure that you are subscribing to Pewter Report TV on YouTube and hitting that like button on our videos. John, why is that important?
Yeah, that helps boost our YouTube SEO. It spreads the
Right.
word to everybody that this is the channel to watch, the channel to be at every day when we go live at 4 p.m., which we will be live again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Matt Matera and I on the Laid Back Thursday podcast. We're going to talk about the Bucs safety situation, talk about the free agents, talk about the long-term plan there. Should they re-sign Jordan Whitehead or should they not? Matt and I might go head-to-head on that. We'll have to see how it goes down. And we'll also give you numbers. We'll talk to contract experts and tell you what the projection looks like for re-signing Jordan Whitehead and whether it's plausible or not. And we'll look at free agents and draft prospects and so on and so forth as well. So we appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for jumping in here and tuning in with us for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast.